name is Roxana Parker. I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Montana United Way. Welcome to our Town Hall. This is a community conversation focused on suicide awareness and prevention. I would like to thank you all for being here this evening. And at this time, I would like to welcome Dr. Scott Poland, who will give us a few words of encouragement to begin.
Thank you very much. I hope I can say some things that will be helpful and meaningful to every single one of you. I am not from Montana, but I've been to Montana many times. My specialty is youth suicide prevention. I'm a survivor of my father's suicide. If you lost a loved one to suicide that was one of your students, I think I have a pretty good idea what you've gone through. And it's really important that we all recognize most suicides can be prevented. And when I read that, especially another youth suicide, I always think of it pretty simply. Untreated or undertreated mental illness, often in combination with adverse childhood experiences. And what are those? The most common ones are rejection from a parent, living with a mentally ill parent, substance abusing parent, being physically, emotionally, sexually abused, losing loved ones, being the victim of bullying. Those are the most common, as well as living in poverty. And I've been here, I think you're all aware that there's been a suicide point cluster for young people in Kalispell. And what that means is that many more suicides than we would ever expect statistically in a short space of time in a single community or area. One thing that I cannot overstress tonight is the answers died with those young people. And it is not productive to start talking about what we know or think we know about those young people's lives. In the U.S., we lose over 2,000 high school students to suicide every year. So we need to be looking for a pattern of what things are present, not a few times, but literally thousands and thousands of times. And the challenge for the community is really for everybody to work together. In a simple word, it takes a village. And that village will include school leaders, community leaders, law enforcement, clergy, medical community, mental health community, parents, and survivor groups all working together. And what it really takes is constant vigilance. There's a slight increase in youth suicides in the spring, but we need constant vigilance all year long. And at the simplest level, we have to talk about it more. We have to talk more about suicide prevention in our homes, our schools, the workplace, as well as our places of worship. And we have to all get much more comfortable in just asking direct questions. I mean, it was 47 years ago, but I remember every last conversation I had with my father. And it's so obvious looking back on it. I just needed to ask. I needed to ask, are you thinking you don't want to live? Are you thinking of suicide? And undoubtedly he would have said yes. I would have known what to do. You're not the first person to feel this way. There's help available. I'm going to be there for you every single step of the way. And one of the things that's really important, and I've been to the West many times, it's hard to say this tactfully, but we need to recognize that 50% of the suicides in this country involve a gun. Guns are only involved in about 5% of the attempts. Nobody gets a second chance if they use a gun. Please know I'm not questioning your right to gun ownership at all. It's just that if you have any reason to think somebody in your family is impulsive, angry, depressed, substance abusing or mentally ill, doesn't it make sense to secure that gun? I worked in the schools in Texas for 25 years. And one Houston teenager left a goodbye note behind to her parents saying, "Why'd you make this so easy? Why'd you leave this gun available to me?" The challenge of the community is to get everybody involved, working together, and everybody more comfortable with knowing those warning signs, making everybody aware of the 24-hour crisis helpline numbers, for example. And does everybody know if I were to pull my iPhone out of my pocket, and if I were to say to Siri, "I want to kill myself," does everybody know what happens? She says, "May I connect you with the National Crisis Helpline?" And for young people, they all like to text. So we have the National Crisis Text Line, where a trained person is texting back. And for those of you who have children, I have a simple question I'd like you to ask them. Who are your go-to adults? If you or a friend ever have these thoughts of suicide, who could you go to for help? And the other thing that I stressed on Monday night at the Canvas Church, as adults, we often talk too much. We need to truly listen. We have to find that shared time when our children will actually talk to us. And as a parent, I always learned when I talked too much, I had too many questions, all of a sudden the conversation was over. So think about that shared time. And the other thing that I ask everybody who was in attendance on Monday night is, when you go home tonight, let your sons and daughters know you are the sons and daughters I have always dreamed of having. And we need to really promote unconditional love to all of the young people in the Valley and the importance of that go-to adult. Resilience and recovery is possible. Suicide is preventable, but it will take the entire community. And I'm really honored to have a chance to make some opening comments tonight, but most importantly, we're going to hear from all of these people who represent various parts of the community. Everybody needs to work together. And thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Poland. At this time, I would like to recognize our mayor, who has joined us this evening, several of our council members as well. We also have some other nonprofit leaders and community members in the community. And I would like to thank each of you for being here tonight. This is a very important subject for all of us. It is very important that we find a way to work together to support all of the people in our community who are hurting, isolated, and just feeling alone. We are the village, and we can do this. At this time, I would like to kind of explain the format of tonight's event. It is a town hall. I will introduce each of our panelists and give you a short bio on each one of them. I will then ask each panelist to tell you a little bit about their role in the community or their work to help prevent and raise awareness for suicide. After their presentations, we will take questions from the audience, and it can either be directed specifically to a certain panelist, or you can leave it open, and we will let whichever panelist chooses to answer do that. We are here to talk about the issues, our concerns, but most importantly, to identify the gaps in our community and find ways we can work together for solutions to help everyone here. At this time, I would like to introduce our panelists. Allison Schmalz is with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. After 40 years as an educator in the Montana schools, with 24 years as a teacher in special education, K through 12, in regular classroom, and another 16 years as a school counselor, she retired. I can't imagine why. During the counseling years, she was a trainer for the International
Olveus.
bullying prevention programs for schools across Montana, including the Kalispell Elementary Schools and several of our rural schools in the Flathead Valley. For the past 5 years, she has served as the walk chair for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Flathead Valley Out of the Darkness Walk, one of 8 walks held in Montana each year, held annually on the 4th Sunday of September, National Suicide Prevention Month. Personally and professionally, she has been and is committed to finding ways to help and support others where and when it is needed. Allison is married and has 2 adult children. Aubrey Howe is with the Flathead Program Manager, Coordinator of Postvention Peer Support Services at Tamarack Grief Resource Center. Aubrey coordinates and facilitates camps, workshops, and groups for children and adults experiencing grief and trauma. She attended the University of Montana and has her Bachelor of Social Work. As a survivor of suicide loss, Aubrey has a specialized interest in compassionate peer support for those grieving a death by suicide and focuses on postvention activities as a critical part of suicide prevention efforts in her work at TGRC. Certified in SOS and QPR, she also leads suicide prevention workshops for people of all ages and backgrounds. Captain Brett Corbett, Kalispell Police Department. Captain Corbett has an associate's degree in criminal justice and a bachelor's degree in public administration. He worked as an emergency medical technician on an ambulance while in college, served as an Orange County deputy for 8 years, has been with the Kalispell Police Department for 22 years as a patrol officer, a school resource officer, motorcycle officer, member of the special response team, patrol sergeant, and now as the patrol captain. He also serves on the board for Braveheart Chaplain Ministry. Captain Corbett has been married for 23 years and has 4 children. His trainings and certifications include suicide prevention strategies for school teams. Casey Howard is the Executive Director of the Nate Shute Foundation. Casey was born and raised in the Flathead Valley. After attending university in Oregon, Casey taught English internationally in South Africa before returning to the Flathead. She has a formal education as a secondary English teacher, but found her true passion working in community mental health. After 10 years working in children's mental health system, Casey transitioned to the Executive Director at the Nate Shute Foundation in 2017. Casey is certified QPR instructor and is a nationally certified school suicide prevention specialist through the American Association of Suicidology. In her free time, Casey enjoys skiing, rafting, and traveling with her family. Micah Hill, Superintendent, Kalispell Public Schools. Mr. Hill has 25 years in education, 20 years as an administrator. He is a suicide survivor, and his trainings and certifications include crisis management for school-based incidents, restorative practices, restorative justice, safe and civil schools, MBI trainer. Leanna Troche, Executive Director and founder of Undaunted Family Connections. Undaunted is a new nonprofit servicing families who are facing challenging family dynamics. Leanna moved to Big Fork 5.5 years ago from Hawaii, where she worked with schools and in the community for 12 years fundraising for art enrichment, technology, and science programs by cultivating community engagement and collaboration among key leaders, business owners, and families. Our panels are all very invested in our community and our community members, and they each bring very unique perspectives to what is happening here in our valley. I will start with Captain Corbett. If you would please tell everyone a little about the work that you do and the programs that are going on at Kalispell Police Department.
That better? Is it on? Okay. I sat on this side hoping you'd start on the left.
Next time.
The police department's in a little bit of a unique position here. Typically, the police respond, and I've responded to I don't even know how many suicides and suicide attempts. But any of the calls that we respond to, we typically show up, we do what needs to be done at the time, and then we leave. There's really no long-term care, so the best we can do at that point is to do what we can to support the people that are involved, who are experiencing that kind of grief or trauma, and then try to get them connected to resources for longer-term help. And then we're on to the next one. And so our response and connection is really typically pretty short. Over the years, specifically with the juveniles and the school-age kids, we started a long time ago with what's called the DARE program, where a police officer would go around to the different schools and teach kids about drugs and drug abuse and try and encourage them not to use that. That's transitioned over the years to where we have now 4 school resource officers, one at Flathead High School, one at Glacier High School, one at Kalispell Middle School, and then one at the college. And the nice thing about that program in comparison to the DARE program that we had years ago was that these officers are in the schools and are able to connect and build relationships longer term with the kids. And so that they're able to be there a lot longer and, again, build relationships. And just an example of something that can happen there, I have a short note. At my time as a school resource officer at Flathead High School, it's really strange, but the kids that seem to need the most help and going through the most significant family issues oftentimes come and talk to the school resource officers. They like the police for some reason. I don't know why. Would you say that's true? I don't know why. Maybe they feel comfortable with this, but this one girl, this poor girl, I gave her so many smoking tickets. And her English teacher came to me one day and handed me this and had me read it. She said, anyway, this is what the girl wrote for her English class. "I think of you as a father, though you don't know it. Everyone else does. I just don't know how to tell you. You've replaced the father I never knew and the stepdad who never could. Without you, I could never have stopped my addictions, but with you by my side, I've learned to live without those things. Even though we're not related, I see you as a father. Even though I've known you for a year, I see you as a father, and to me, that makes you my father." And the English teacher pointed out that was written to me. And what's really shocking is not only did I give that poor girl so many tickets, my involvement with her life there at the school was pretty limited. But it just it speaks to the fact that they need and desire relationship and someone who cares about them so badly. And that everybody has an opportunity to do that. It doesn't have to be the school resource officer. It can be anybody in the community that knows of these kids. We all have an opportunity to do that to those around our sphere of influence. So it's been a great program. As a police department, so in addition to the school resource officers, we also have developed it's called a co-responder program recently, where we have a therapist who does not work for the police department, but she works with us as well as with the sheriff's departments and all the other law enforcement agencies. So that when we do respond to a mental health call, a suicide threats call, some domestic violence type calls, we are able to, sometimes she responds with us, and other times we're able to refer her to those situations so that she can, again, make those contacts and provide longer term care and resources to the people who are most in need. So that's been a hugely successful program, and we're trying to figure out ways to make sure we can expand and continue that program. Because what people really need is connection and relationship, and people who are going to support them and know that they care. So as a police department, that's what we're doing.
Allison?
Hello, thank you for coming. As a person who has lived in this community since 1975 and actually worked in the schools. Back in the 80s, I was at Flathead High School, for example, but I did care groups. I saw the success of the connections that came through those, and I was a teacher then, and I had a lot of my friends in the community that decided they wanted to be involved in those groups. But what I saw is that even though it started as trying to stop using alcohol and that as a topic, I saw a lot of kids just come to be connected. And that's why I, even as a counselor, I spent a lot of time trying to develop those social interactions, the appropriate sort of relationships. As Brett was talking about, I worked with the SROs over at the high school. In fact, that's how we met in the first place way back in the day. But my commitment to making a difference for young people and adults as well goes back to the very beginning of my understanding about mental health. My father was a psychiatrist and a neurologist and is still alive at 97 and still actively pursuing things like grief groups and things like that. So I know that my heritage goes back to believing that mental health as a medical issue needs to be addressed. We can't keep pretending like just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not important. So when I started facilitating the walks 5 years ago for suicide prevention, which the most recent one was Sunday, and we had an outpouring that broke my heart and yet brought me hope. And Casey Howard spoke, and I got a lot of feedback about the fact that the hope from her message meant a lot to them. But what I saw was all these hurting people saying, help me find a way to connect, to make a difference, raise awareness, share the resources, just let people know we care. And how many people in our community came and attended and broke our records. And we're one of 8 walks, as she said, but we are a small walk by all means. This year, however, with the outpouring among the young people, I saw firsthand their desire to do something. So they want to be involved with what we do as well. And let's be sure and talk to them, and let's be sure and bring them in. But I say this is a one-time thing. We had community days and this kind of thing. It is an annual thing. However, my commitment goes deeper than that through things like working for United Way and helping with projects that go on all the time. I want to encourage every one of you to say, I don't want to deny this anymore. I want my family to know that I'm going to be one that says, if you have a mental health problem, I want to help you reach out, find the professional care that you need, and I'm always hearing stories at this time of year when I'm doing this walk. And then if people know me because of the walk, I hear them throughout the year and I try to connect them with other resources. I feel very compassionate for all these families. I feel very sad and I want to do what I can do so that no more children think this is okay and that no more adults think this is okay. But we have to set that precedent right now, break the culture of don't talk about stuff. Let's get going and join not only the people that walked or that have walked in the past, who are remembering and honoring people that they loved. Let's not have it be just a reaction. Let's have it be a protective thing where we say, this is just the beginning. We've got more to do and let's just get together and do it. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Micah Hill, Superintendent of Kalispell Schools. I got the opportunity to sit in with a couple of groups of high school students this week, and we got to ask them what they need. And when I went into these groups, I said, how many of you know who I am? And a bunch of hands shot up. And then I asked, how many of you know what I do? And a bunch of hands shot up. And I said, well, that's good because I'm not really sure what I do. But, you know, my responsibility in the district is to oversee a lot of things. And when it comes specifically to suicide and mental health, the list is long. We have a responsibility because of our position in the community and what we do and how we impact the lives of students. And when it comes to suicide, we talk about prevention, and we train our staff, and we talk about the signs of suicide and where to go and who to talk to. We have curriculum that we use in our middle schools and high schools. We have support groups. We have a variety of people in positions like counselors and school psychologists and school-based mental health therapists. We do a lot of those things. And then the other part of what we do is also intervention. You know, and it's hard. For 13 years, I was at Glacier High School, and we never had a student complete suicide until last May. And now we are dealing with immense grief and sadness and frustration. And I get to be the person that supports our administrators, who supports our counselors, who support our teachers, who in turn support our students, and also have to be in a position to support our community. Beyond intervention, we also talk about postvention and what we do after a suicide. Because we're worried about contagion, and we're worried about this cluster and imitation, and not just for Kalispell Public Schools, but for schools across our valley. Sometimes people don't realize how interconnected all of these students are. They're on a sports team, they play soccer, they're in club soccer, they play against these students from other towns. The one thing that I'm hoping as a community, and a lot of these things have been shared, is this is a really heavy lift. And to put it on schools as it's their responsibility is almost impossible. We do not have enough resources in our buildings. One school counselor at Flathead High School has 400 students on their caseload. Show me a private provider who has anywhere close to that. And being responsible for the mental health of 3,000 high school students is incredible. And one of my frustrations is that when we have a tragedy, and whether it's by suicide or a car accident or any other loss, we're really quick to come together for a couple of weeks. And we're hurt, we're in a grief period, and then a couple of weeks later, we get shuffled to the bottom of the deck. And Dr. Poland, I've been able to listen to him and talk with him for the last 3 days, and he talked about sustaining and being vigilant, that we can't drop the ball on this. And we are as committed a partner in our community to the well-being of our kids as anyone will be. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for showing up, and I agree. I'm just really hopeful we can all keep showing up for one another. As Micah talks about postvention, that's a lot of what Tamarack is doing in our community. So we are providing grief support, grief counseling, grief group programming, and grief education to other professionals year-round. So we are here and available to offer grief support, and when we can't do it ourselves, because as we know, none of us can do this alone, and as we talk about, caseloads do get full, but we just aspire to be a spot in the community to have resources, so when we might not be the right fit for you, we can hopefully help folks find who might be the right fit. We're really just here to strengthen the community, walk alongside folks as we journey with grief. I can offer one perspective, each of us can offer a certain perspective, and I'm also really looking forward to hearing from you all as community members showing up tonight and your perspectives, and really kind of having a conversation around this. I think it's really important. I'm trying to think of what else. I just want you all to know that we believe deeply that we're not in this alone. And so we're just really honored to work alongside all of these other nonprofits in the community to keep showing up. All kinds of stuff happening at the state level and at the community level and on that individual level. And that's what we've been talking about a lot recently, is just how can we all move forward, continuing to show kindness to one another and compassion to one another, and make space to grieve together as a community, as families, as individuals, for ourselves. So may you each take the space for yourself to be who you are and how you are in this moment, as we will walk forward and we are resilient, and may there be space to take the time to feel what we feel, as almost many of us, probably each of us, are grieving the loss of somebody at this moment.
My name is Leanna Troche. I'm the Executive Director for Undaunted Family Connections. I'm honored to be here tonight with this panel and with all of you. So thank you so much for coming tonight and taking the time out of your day to show up. I think that's the most important thing, and we can all applaud you. I'm an ICF certified life and parent coach, and so at Undaunted Family Connections, we're a new nonprofit that was launched last year in the middle of this COVID pandemic. And what we do is we provide support to families that are dealing with struggling family dynamics, challenging dynamics, and we provide one-on-one parent coaching. So we sit one-on-one with parents. We are not counselors. We are not, we will recommend and refer parents and families to counselors and therapists, but we work really well in collaboration with therapy. And so parents come, they sit with us. We have a 12-week and a 6-week program that we offer. And we look at their strengths. It's a strengths-based program. We also look at some of the protective factors that can help strengthen their family unit. It can strengthen themselves as an individual, in helping them to find resources in the community. And we really work on some goals. We set up we set up their primary focus on what it is that they like to work on in their family, and most of the time that is communication. How can I start communicating with my kids? How can we start having these conversations? There's so much conflict or chaos sometimes going on in the home. So we work with families of all different demographics and levels of crisis, or just really struggling with your child wanting to pull away and reaching a little bit of autonomy and seeking that autonomy and finding their self-concept and their own ideas and their own ideologies of who they want to be. And so we sit with parents. Well, they kind of have to release their children a little bit, and there's a lot of fear that goes along with that. So we sit with them and help them through that process. A lot of the time when they have maybe one child who might be at risk, that's a lot of the time what we get are parents who are in crisis, and they just don't know what to do. There's a lot of time there's other kids at home. So this program really works for the entire family. We also do one-on-one youth mentoring, so we can sit one-on-one with youth. Again, all sorts of different risk factors that these kids might be showing, or maybe it's just that they're really having a hard time socializing and getting into a group or finding their place. And so just sitting and working with children, youth, teenagers mostly, one-on-one. Right now, I'm really excited that we launched our Undaunted Collective. And so that's our after-school program, teaching social emotional learning to students. It's an evidence-based program. We meet once a week. We just launched this program on September 14th, and we're still getting the word out to the community and letting them know that we're here. We meet, our office is right in the back. It's in this building here. And for Kalispell School District 5, we meet on Tuesdays. For middle school, it's at 3:30. And for high school, it's at 6 o'clock. We also are launching this program in Big Fork. And so Big Fork meets at 3:30 on Thursdays and 6 o'clock on Thursdays. Eventually, we're hoping that with the success of this program, we can take this to other communities out in Columbia Falls and out in Whitefish, and we'll just kind of continue to expand and even see what we can do with Evergreen. So really touching all of the Flathead Valley. Another thing that I heard about, that connection, that's what Undaunted Collective is. It's a place for the kids to come and start to identify where their thoughts are leading to their actions and ultimately leading to how they're feeling about themselves. So that's the social emotional part of connecting that mind body. What am I thinking and how that's resulting in how I'm showing up in the world. And it's helping them to set their self-concept, set their moral compass and who they want to be. And ultimately, this program will help reduce the rates of substance abuse, of youth violence, of bullying. So this is really a lot of our program here with the Undaunted Collective is in prevention. And I'm all about the upstream approach, right? How can we get these kids before they jump in the water? And right now, we're kind of, pulling the kids out of the water. And sometimes it's a little too late. Through launching this nonprofit, it came about through my own experiencing of having a teenager who was in crisis, and I couldn't find support. I didn't know where to turn. I was a single mom. I looked everywhere for any kind of support and services. And I ended up finding services outside this local area. I found some services in Washington and Utah. I signed myself up for coaching. I did all of this myself to help better our family. And by getting these services is when I really started seeing change in my own family dynamic. And I'm grateful to say that we're on a golden path now, I would like to say, with all other family dynamics that happen along the way. But I really wanted to bring these services to the Flathead Valley at an affordable rate. So that is how Undaunted was launched. But what I have found is this community support, all of these wonderful organizations that are doing wonderful things, but they're all doing it on their own. And I think the most important thing and the reason why I'm sitting at this table is that I've been talking to so many organizations and I've been trying to find ways that we can come together and start to work in collaboration with each other so that we can be a stronger unit. We are a village, and right now we're trying to do it all individually. So bringing these programs and doing it as a whole, Undaunted has a lot of plans, and one of them is a youth coalition. That's another one that will take some key students from our Undaunted Collective after-school program who want to get trained so that they can start their own coalition and be peer-to-peer support in the schools. So this empowers them, this gives them a voice, and it also gives them another resource, the kids and students' resources to talk to inside the schools. The other thing that we're talking about doing with United Way here at the Gateway is doing monthly workshops for families and community members. And that could be bringing in once a month, we would have a speaker speaking on suicide prevention. We have a speaker that will come in and speak of drugs and alcohol's effects on an adolescent's brain. We can do also have a therapist come in or a counselor come in to talk about adolescent brain development and where they are. Also, I'm a protective factors trainer, and so we'll do an overview on protective factors and where we can identify some of our strengths with the protective factors and where we can identify some of the weaknesses where we can maybe work on those and take that home. So those are just some of the things that we're looking to do and pull together as a community, and this is where other community members, other organizations, we all should be talking and joining together and doing this as one instead of separately. Another reason I'm sitting here is the Flathead Valley has recently gotten funding for Communities That Care. It's a strategic plan program which is right now funded through the Western Montana Mental Health Center. And they have a Communities That Care coordinator, and they're going to be hiring hopefully a second one to help start the initiative to start bringing all of these key leaders in our community. And key leaders that Dr. Poland had mentioned earlier would be the health department, law enforcement, our school administrators, organizations, religious organizations. There's a sector of 12 different sectors that we need to bring together right now. Nonprofits, parents, youth groups, all of these people need to come to the table and sit down. And this Communities That Care program has worked in other communities across Montana and the United States. And what they found is a 25 to 30% decrease in substance use, in youth violence, bullying, tobacco use across the board. And so this program will be able to help these key leaders. We'll create a core board, and then we'll create work groups below those that will collect all the data. A lot of what we're doing here tonight, which is collecting the data, finding what organizations are doing what, and seeing where our gaps are. From there, we'll start to bring in evidence-based programs, and that could be after-school programs, that can be support to parents, whatever it is that we need as a community to help support what is going on in our community to help our young people thrive. So the Communities That Care initiative, you'll start to see that out. We're hoping to have this data collected by next year. And then this program is a sustained program that will be able to have a complete community change within our community. And it doesn't just, we can't put all the pressure on the schools, and we can't put all the pressure on all these small organizations. We have to come together as a whole to find complete community change. And a change as to the message that we're giving our children, the messages at home, the message in school, the message that they see when they're driving out in the community, and the people that we're talking to. So just keep a lookout for that, and if you're interested, get involved, come speak with me. Aside from that, I've filled up enough time, and I think I'll pass it over. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Casey Howard. I'm the director at the Nate Shute Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Before I tell you about who I am and what I do, I think it's really important that we name that the conversation we are having tonight is a difficult one. And your self-care as you sit through this and after you leave here is paramount. So please think about who are the connections in your life, who are the safe people, who can you talk to, who can you debrief with. What helps you be whole and feel good, because this is not easy. And it is never easy, and the last several weeks and months have been especially challenging. So like other panel members shared, thank you so much for being here and showing up and being part of the conversation. I'm excited about the opportunity. So the Nate Shute Foundation has been working in Flathead Valley since 1999 as a 501c3 nonprofit. But I will say I was our first paid staff member when I came on 5 years ago. So it was really an all volunteer kind of kitchen table organization that has now grown to having a really comprehensive approach to suicide awareness and outreach and training in the Valley. So what that looks like is we go into 7th and 9th grade classrooms across Flathead Valley using evidence-based curriculums. Specifically, we use the Signs of Suicide curriculum to talk to students in their health class about what to look for, what those warning signs are, what risk factors are, but most importantly, to promote help-seeking behavior. We talk about what it means to find a trusted adult, what trusted adults look like, how to access them. We share those crisis resources. We are also infusing resilience-based curriculum into that using the Sources of Strength program, which helps young people identify where their strengths are and where they can find help. If you've heard me soapbox before, you know that it's a lot of what Leanna said, but I believe that true prevention needs to happen a lot earlier, and I think a lot of what we do in suicide prevention is really still crisis intervention work. So there is a lot more upstream to do, as Leanna mentioned. So that school-based work is one of our most robust programs, but we also offer evidence-based training to educators, to community members, to businesses and organizations, to law enforcement, to the medical profession, to anyone who will listen. And my calendar is very full in the coming months because people are ready to have the conversation. We do consulting work. We do things like bring in wonderful people like Dr. Scott Poland to help our community to be better and to do better. The other thing that I think is important to mention that our community is aware of is that we have funding to offer for young and old people, well, people of all ages, youth and adults, to access therapy if they are experiencing financial barriers to accessing that therapy. I will say that the financial barriers, the way we qualify that is by perceived financial barriers. Because you don't have to be uninsured or underinsured to have a financial barrier to accessing treatment. Therapy is expensive, and for some people it's hard to prioritize that into our monthly budget, right? So if there is a need, we truly believe that if somebody is asking for help, they deserve help. You know, something that's been sitting really heavy with me for the last few weeks is that Nate Shute was one of my best friends when he died by suicide when I was 17, 3 days before the start of my senior year at Whitefish High School. I've lost 5 other friends to suicide. And what I've been thinking about over the last weeks and months is how vividly I remember that feeling of being a kid and being so broken and so confused. And I hope that that perspective is fueling sort of my drive right now. I believe that it is. I don't think we can ever say we know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, but I remember my pain and my grief, and I sit here before you today as somebody who has dedicated my life to mental health and to suicide prevention. And that's what I think is the best thing that we can do right now, that we can encourage kids to do right now, is to be a part of the solution and get involved. Thank you all so much for being here. It really is very cool to see so many people here to have the conversation tonight.
So thank you all for being here tonight. I'm new to the Valley. One of the driving factors that really moved my family here was exactly this. Seeing the community come together every time there's a need. It is put out there. We all know what we can do, and we're all a little tiny piece of that village. But we are all connected, and we are together, and together we are stronger than any of us can be individually, than any of us can be on our own. There are so many good programs going on, so many amazing nonprofits and for-profit businesses that are here to help all of us, help each other. So I think part of what we really wanted to communicate tonight is what resources are already existing in the Valley. So we spent some time today at the south end of the building on the way out of entrance A. You will see lots of flyers, business cards, pamphlets, information for programs that are already happening here. Obviously, we need to do more. We need to work together, and we need to do even more. So we're here tonight to find out what more can we do. So I would like to extend my commitment to everyone on this panel as the director of the United Way, but more importantly, as a community member living here. If there is something I can do to support your work at KPD, to support the suicide prevention walk, our school districts, our grief recovery, I work here with Leanna all the time. We see each other constantly. And Casey, thank you so much for getting Dr. Scott Poland here and being a part of this group and having all of these resources available to us. So part of it is asking those tough questions. Part of it is also listening. How do we listen to each other better and be willing to have those tough conversations? So I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience now. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'm going to be the runner. We only have one cordless mic, so I will bring it around and we'll take questions. Yes?
I'm Julia, mother of 3, yoga instructor. And I want to talk about a little bit of, let me stand. A little bit from different perspective. As a yoga instructor, I want to come from energy thing. So obviously, that's where I'm coming from. That's where I see kids lost hope, deep hurt, something deep, and they lost it. Like, it's one thing when adults living life, but when kids do it, and so many of them, it's a statement here for us as adults. So I want to ask you, what are you doing as an adult? What are you bringing here? As a soul coming here in your physical body. What is your mission here? What are you doing here on earth? Start think heaven. What do you want to see? Oh, my thoughts are, I did not plan this, but when I come, like, okay, I have to speak up. So, I propose for school superintendent, yoga has to be a class starting with a kindergarten. It has to be something there. There is not just physical thing, it's a spiritual and mind, connecting all 3 things together. And we have to teach kids from little one how to be in touch with our souls, in touch with who we are inside. Youth centers, youth camps during summers when schools are over. This is just something that comes into my mind. Thank you.
Have been an educator for 35 years, and over that period of time, I have seen different kids react differently. What I would like to know is if anybody has steps that are already delineated where we can begin to eliminate the stigma that seems to be associated with people who are asking for help. Because people are not willing to put themselves out there, which I can totally understand. But I would like to see some sort of process made and that be put out, because I think that would probably help each and every one of us. The other question I have for Leanna, do you have provisions for students who cannot afford your therapy?
We do. We have a scholarship program, so families can apply to our application. There's a $25 application fee that can be waived, and there's a scholarship program that they can apply for.
Is there any insurance companies cover any of?
We don't know. We're ICF certified life coaches, and that is not covered through insurance yet. So that is why we do have the scholarship program available to families.
Can I follow up on that just regarding the steps? I think it's important for parents and community members to know, when I talked about the help-seeking behavior that we talk about using the Signs of Suicide curriculum, we use an acronym ACT. This is the steps that we teach young people. So it's acknowledge, care, and tell. Acknowledge is notice those signs that your friend is struggling. We give them language with how to communicate that to their friends. Show care, which is not fix it.
It's about showing up, being there, the messages that Scott was saying earlier about I'm going to be here with you, I'll walk with you, what do you need, how can we hang out, how can we connect? And then we talk about telling a trusted adult and breaking down those barriers to secrecy as well. So I just think it's worth noting. I don't know if that was what you're looking for, but just so you know, that's what young people are hearing is that message to act, acknowledge, care, tell.
And you did say that you're working in the 7th grade and the 9th grade, but as you also admitted, it needs to start younger. And so I think that if that can all be put out in some sort of a publication and put out for people to get a hold of, a lot of my friends are educators, and I think that we probably could see a whole lot more of that, help coming from that.
I agree. The curriculum we use is specifically for those age groups, but I agree that it needs to happen younger, and it also needs to happen in that 11th, 12th grade area where they're transitioning to adulthood, because I think that's a challenging time as well.
So this is for Micah Hill, and basically everybody, okay? So Mr. Phelps, when he passed away, all the kids ever since the last week of May have really affected me. But when Mr. Phelps passed away, I'm a mother of 7, and as of yesterday, a grandmother to 16. I have never had any children commit suicide, but we do fight with depression, anxiety. Okay, I have been very blessed in that way. As a matter of fact, I have one of my daughters here tonight because I want her to know that I care. I'm not educated. I don't know. I'll figure it out though. Okay? But after the death of Mr. Phelps, I started making some phone calls of my own to question other schools. So, for example, I called the St. Matthew's Catholic Church. They have a suit, a uniform, and they have an extreme phone requirement, as in when they walk in the door, their phones are shut off, put in their lockers, and left there all day long. If they get caught with their phone, even at the lunch hour, they get kind of reprimanded the first time, and then mom told, but the second time, they get in trouble. And it's not a slap on the hand. They're, according to the gal that I talked to, they're there to connect with the other students, not social media. And they're, because like my daughter has told me that she uses her phone in school to do some of her homework. So then I called Stillwater Christian. They don't have a uniform, however, they have an extremely strict dress code. Jeans are to not have any holes, and shirts are to be covering. I mean, the gal gave me the list, and it's like a mile long. This daughter would pass with the dress code, but I have 2 older ones that would have been sent home consistently. They also have the extreme cell phone. When they get to school, their phones get shut off, they get put in the lockers, and they are not allowed to have them out, even at lunch hour, during the school day. And I know I've talked to my daughter about this, and my daughter gets livid with me about it, and that's okay. I still love you. But it seems like there's a lot that goes on in these devices, and they have every answer to the world in these devices. I even had the opportunity to talk to one of my daughter's teachers, actually a substitute, who said he actually prefers to teach the kids at KMS than he does Flathead High or Glacier High, because he will sit in class and the students are in their phones. And as a substitute teacher, he said that one of the teachers that he had taken over with for the day, he had to carry out that teacher's assignment. And the assignment was each child was assigned a movie that they individually watched on their cell phone. What can we do about that? Because, I mean, and you guys can get mad at me if you want. I don't care personally, this is my child. But back in the day, if my mom needed to get a hold of me, she called the office and said, hey, could you do me a favor and have Jody call me in between classes or at lunch? And I had to walk to the office to call.
Well, that's going to be a loaded question, very difficult to answer. Looking around the room, I see a lot of people here who probably, like me, grew up with a phone that was connected to a wall. How many of you still have those?
Nice.
All right, we got a few. Some are holding on.
Good work.
I think one of the challenges, and you're right, the middle school does have a no cell phone policy, and part of that is developmentally, in our elementary schools are the same way, but developmentally we also have a responsibility to teach responsible use. And one of the things that's really challenging for schools, for school administrators, is to legislate and take control of issues that should start at the home. If a parent says, you're not going to take a cell phone to school, we will support you 100% every time. And technology has become the bane of our existence. Imagine that I could get my phone out and I could watch a movie, a video clip, I could flip through Instagram, I could Snapchat my friends, I could do pretty much whatever I want. This is entertainment 24/7, 365. And then I'm going to get up and teach dangling participles and gerund phrases. And I am competing with this all day, every day. And it's a real challenge. But the other thing that we do and that we talk about is how do we use that responsibly in our schools? And can we use it as a tool? I use my phone every day as a tool. I get phone calls, I get text messages, I get emails. I literally have to be available 24/7 to respond to people. I don't think kids need to be available 24/7. And, you know, we have talked about some of those things, and it would be really easy for me to go to my school board and say, hey, this is what I want. I want to say no more cell phones in our schools. But I also have to have a community that backs that. If I throw out something, we'll just say more controversial and say this is what we're going to do in our school, I guarantee I'd be run out of town. And so those are really challenging issues for schools to address and deal with. And again, it comes back to this is not a school issue, right? We're going to control and legislate for 7 hours of the day, but what are they doing for the other 18, 17 hours? What are parents doing to limit their access to the phone and to technology at home, in the bedroom, at the dinner table, any other time? And so doing something like that, that makes us the bad guys. And then what we end up doing is we set ourselves up for a fight with kids and parents and people who don't necessarily respect those kinds of decisions. That is part of our job and our responsibility. We legislate a lot of things. We tell them when they have to be in class. We tell them that they get detention if they don't make it on time. We do a lot of those things. And so picking and choosing what those things are and how we're going to interact with our students, especially at the high school age, is very challenging and difficult. And I don't know that I'm going to have the answer that you're looking for, but it's certainly worth the conversation.
So can I throw something else out there that I forgot to say? In the process of my 2 phone calls at those 2 schools, they have had absolutely no suicides in the last 6 months. And both of them were pretty sure they hadn't had any suicide in the last year. And I'm not trying to say that it's the school's fault or it's a phone's fault or whatever, but I agree with you. I think when you go to school, parents need to stop the phone thing, because I think this becomes our world instead of this. They can Google their answers more than they can ask a friend. So, like I said, when I asked them the 2 questions about their their uniform policy and whether or not they had cell phones allowed. And then I asked them about the suicide rate. Lord, because that to me right there says that is a major problem. And I'm not saying it's the whole problem, because I guarantee you some of it is us parents. But I think it's a good start.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. It's a very complex issue. And, I look back and, I got an email recently from someone about empirical data and kind of blaming schools for the recent suicides. And I take it a little bit personally because the empirical data that I would have would say that we've had these around for a long time. We're going on 20 years of having these around and kids having more and more access and parents giving them to them at a younger age and not controlling what they're doing with that. And so in that time, we didn't have suicides. And now suddenly we do, but we want to say it's uniforms, it's this, it's this, it's this. There is enough blame to go around. And I certainly get our fair share of it. But I also come back to the things that we have set up here, and that is, this is a community problem, a community issue. And I would love it if parents banded together and said, let's unite for our kids, let's do something different. And that's one of the things that we've been struggling with. We do so much in our schools to support mental health and resiliency and taking care of kids. We transport kids to the ER. We do everything that we possibly can. We never, ever want to see one of our kids hurt in any way, shape, or form. And so that, I think, is again what's kind of drawn us all here today is what more can we do? And there are certainly things we're going to do as a school. And maybe part of that solution is we're going to come together as a community and say, no more, not in our community. Our kids are too precious and too important to us.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. The thought came that possibly we hold a community workshop, one where family members and parents and grandparents can come out and we do some technology education. There are some folks out there who have written some books that can educate parents a little bit on what technology and what we can do as individuals, taking the focus off the schools. And so maybe we all as parents get together and sign a waiver and hold each other accountable and say, I'm going to commit to that and you commit to that, and we all do this together as a community. Because I know for myself with a teenage daughter, well, you can't take that, so-and-so gets her phone and so-and-so's parents don't do that, and you're more strict than all the other parents, so that's what they kind of gang up on each other, right, and use each other as cop-outs. And so in a way that we can all come together as a community and as parents, sign a form and commitment that this is something we do. And I do have somebody in mind that we can bring in as a community to teach us about technology and the damage that it's doing to our children's brains developmentally. And then some tips on how we can start to limit that and do that and commit to each other that we'll do that and start taking action ourselves as parents and allowing the schools to do the work they do as well.
Thank you. Jane, you have a question?
So I've heard a lot of questions and conversation around things, whether it be school uniforms, cell phones, listen from SROs, life coaches. None of this stuff is evidence-based, and that's what really concerns me is the fact that we're not focusing on what's evidence-based programming, like community schools, mentorship. Our Big Brothers and Big Sisters programs don't have enough mentors. Mentorship takes children 50%, which is one of the highest statistical research points from getting kids to where they need to be, as well as community school-based models. But we're focused on talking about other things that are not actually addressing what is evidence-based in our country, and that's what honestly concerns me the most. So what are we going to step up and do as a community, whether it's mentorship, advocating for community schools? Because the reality is, COC grants are great, but have fun when you have a 78-page grant application that's going to take more than 150 pages, that's going to give you limited funding for a small amount of time. There's enough money in our community that we don't need it to be restricted. We can take care of this ourselves, but we're not focusing on that. And I want to ask what we're going to do about that.
I say something?
Yes, please.
One of the reasons why I became involved with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is that one of the primary uses of the money that is raised is research, and it is data-based, it is statistical, and I know even Dr. Scott Poland helped work on the school-based toolkit, and so that comes from there. There are a lot of materials that are developed. The advocacy that they have, for example, to put in the 988 super hotline that's coming our way should help also, because that's one of the things that was brought out by the data, is that it's very important for people to have easy access to the kinds of help that they need. But then we also have to have those resources locally available. But I think that and it's not to diminish in any way your passion, because I hear it, and I know that that's true. All of us have a commitment to do what's right, doing the best we can. A lot of what we do is anecdotal. A lot of it is subjective. And so the more that we can get involved with that, and I know that Nate Shute uses the materials that are well developed that way as well. So all of those, I highly recommend that every single person in this room decides that in the next year you're gonna do QPR. You're gonna do mental health first aid. You're gonna get involved and find out what that toolkit is and what part you can play in making a difference in your schools. That's a place to start right there. And so whether you get together and talk about it and make those commitments, just right in your head right now, just make that decision to find out more, and because it's out there and available, and I'm part of the background for getting this done, but then I'm also part of the wheels that will implement whatever I can help with. But each of us have to do that as well.
And just to touch again, Undaunted does have 2 evidence-based programs, the social emotional learning for the after-school program, and then also I am the trainer for the protective factors from the Center of the Study of Social Policy, which is an evidence-based program as well. So those, the protective factors training will start to come. I'm hoping I can get it off in October, but those are going to be a 8-week series for parents to be able to come and start looking at those protective factors in their own families and their family dynamics.
My kids are all adults, so I just was wondering, if you don't have kids in school, what are some signs that other adults can look for that you're talking about? And then how do we handle those if we do see anything?
Just to clarify, you're asking about what would be signs that somebody's struggling in an adult? No, go ahead, yeah.
No, I'm not around kids anymore, really. I mean, I have adult children, I have grandchildren, so I'm not really around kids or of the teenage years. So if I were to be around or, happen to be out in the public, what would be some signs I could look for? And then how would I handle that?
To be really candid, I wish it was that easy. Because what we're typically looking for is a drastic change in behavior or mood or appearance or personality or activities, right? So if you don't know that person and aren't connected to them, it's hard to see those things. But some of the other telltale signs that as a community and in our workplaces and our places of influence that we can look for are things like giving away prized possessions or getting personal affairs in order. There's some research, I guess, out there about people taking pets to animal shelters before attempting or dying by suicide. So those kinds of things that really show that somebody is looking for ways to say goodbye, to get things in order. And of course, if they're talking, writing, posting about death, dying, or suicide, those are going to be red flags for us to check in as well.
Can I add just a little bit to that? I think from a school perspective, if you're a grandparent or a parent, if you are seeing your kids or grandkids who are withdrawing, if they have quit doing a favorite activity, if their attendance starts to drop, if they don't care about their appearance, failing grades. And it's not to say that any one of those things is a sign, but that's a sign that something is going on. And those are things that, from a school perspective, we look at very closely and track that information on our kids. And there are probably others that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but those would be some of those telltale things that are really tangible for people to look at.
And then who would just, like a normal person, call if they, I mean, you could talk to, if it was a teenager, talk to the parent, or a younger child, talk to their parent. But otherwise, if it was just in public, could they call the police department? Even if you may not have a name, or?
A name would be helpful. A name would be helpful. Yeah, I'm not sure what the statistics or the numbers are on this, but the police department responds daily to suicide threats. And officers go out and they do the best they can to evaluate how significant a threat this is or how imminent a threat it is. And if we have the ability, given the information that we're able to put together in our investigation, to determine whether we have enough authority at that point to take them into custody, and at that point we can and do a lot. Take people into custody. They are not in trouble. It's called a mental health hold, and we transport them to the hospital to have a mental health professional talk with them and get more information in more detail about where they're at, where their mental health is at. With all of our vast psychological training, note my sarcasm. Police officers respond, like I said, daily. I don't even know how many calls we get a year on that, but it's a pretty significant number where we do go out, we talk to people, we talk to the people that know them, that were concerned enough to call us. They'll say, hey, my friend sent me a text and says that they are done with life, they've had it, and they're telling me goodbye. And we do everything we can then to try to track them down. We'll get statements from the person that got that information. We'll talk to the person involved once we find them. And again, if there's enough evidence there to allow us to do it, we will take them into custody. They're not in trouble, but we take them and then to get some follow-up help for that.
I want to add just one more thing, because this feels like an important time to plug the crisis lines that Scott was talking about earlier, that those are not just for somebody who is in crisis, but if you need a resource, if you're wondering what to do or how to help somebody, you can call or text those lines and get some guidance on what your best next step should be.
So, Captain Corbett, thank you for being on the front line. You see a lot more than most of us ever want to. That being said,
See more than I want to.
You touched on the point that in the short amount of time that you have, you also try and get the families in touch with the help they're going to need going forward. What, if anything, could be done to put something in your hands that would consolidate? It's been 2.5 years. I just recently learned of the Nate Shute Foundation. There may be programs in the valley, but for a grieving family dealing with the issues, to even know they should be reaching out, it's not available. And do you have anything like that that is cohesively put together that you could gently pass to the families to say, these are some of the resources available even?
We don't have a set flyer that I can give you for that. That's one of the reasons as a department we've put together, or we're working on this co-responder program, where any mental health type related calls, and oftentimes family, domestic violence and those kinds of things, we refer to our co-responder, who is a therapist that works with the police department, as well as, and she works also closely with our chaplains. And that as a team, they, the co-responder, the chaplains when it's appropriate, are able to respond and then put those people in touch with those programs, because we don't have a list and we don't necessarily know. There's all kinds of different programs that are available,
But finding them is impossible.
well, and they're all a little bit different, and probably all offer a little bit different twist on things or different services for different situations. And it takes someone who knows more about that to really make sure that someone gets plugged in to the right resources. And we're not able to keep track of all that, but we do work with, again, our co-responder. That's her job, that's what she does. And she also, if you know anybody that's interested in it, they're looking for a, what's it called? A case manager to do even more follow-up when after she has that initial conversation. And they're actively looking for someone to be involved in that. So we're trying to expand that program, again, to provide longer-term follow-up and get people connected with resources that can help them.
I was going to plug the crisis line again as a resource.
So I can't solve having the providers or having a long 5 months to wait or weeks to wait to get in to see a counselor. However, I do want to let everyone know the 211 social service helpline will be up and active for our area of Montana very soon. And so part of that is we have a database of thousands of resources. So that might make finding that help a little easier. We can't make them get you in faster, but we could at least get you connected with the correct resources right away. Okay.
I would like to just, I would like to add one more thing too. In the schools, there are, and I'm not sure what district you're talking about, but the first line obviously is reaching out to school counselors in the schools, and a 9-year-old would be available to that. But there are also mental health programs available in a lot of the schools too, especially at the elementary level. And when we talk about trying to establish, this goes back, I was in the school district for a lot of years, and as I became a school counselor, I advocated for more mental health services, and our state would tell them year by year, you can go with your program or you can't. So wait, and then finally we got it so that there was the continuity we needed. So there are services available within the schools too, and I was so thankful for that after the years of trying to get people to say, we shouldn't have to make parents go find somebody for that very reason, also because they work or whatever, just to being able to get them, so that we wanted to have it be available to kids within schools too. So I'm hopeful that some of that might be even available through your school.
But like he stated, that counselor has such a load already.
Well, I'm speaking of elementary for a 9-year-old. Their caseloads are smaller, and they're also available to help you find resources. So do go ahead and talk to the people at your school for the 9-year-old to help get those resources, because they are all very well versed in what's available in the vicinity. So I just encourage you to get that way too, okay?
We talked about what can be done in the schools, and I am until about 2 months ago, my entire life I've had the phone hanging on the wall. I finally caved. But I also see and have sensed what a lot of people know about what this device does. And it wasn't long ago, within the last few months, you're starting to tune into Netflix, which is the only television we have in the home. The only entertainment we have is Netflix or that kind of thing. That's very limited what we watch. But we did watch a thing called The Social Networking. What a documentary put on by and documented by the CEOs from Google, from all these social networks and whatever, and they described very clearly the statistics and whatnot, what this thing is doing to our country, to our children, to our kids. And, we are social creatures. We're community. We've been created to communicate with one another. And this little phone here, this little thing that people use has taken away the eye-to-eye, the person-to-person, the heart-to-heart that we used to have. And years ago, we didn't have the suicide problem we have today. We didn't have the distractions. And, the comments the young lady made earlier about the 2 schools she talked to, where the telephones are not allowed. They go in the lockers. Captain Corbett gave this young lady tickets for smoking a number of times, and yet she respected him And you know, being a disciplinarian is not always easy, but a lot of times it's the best thing we can do for the children we love. And I would think that, I would hope that there could be some way of documenting, some way of moving forward in the school system, a way of a little bit more discipline, no telephones, a healthier and academic environment where people can communicate better. I can't imagine sitting in school and watching people texting each other, looking up information during tests. They're a distraction, and it takes away again from that one-on-one. And I think we can develop a happier, healthier community if we would learn to moderate the use of that device. And it's going to happen, one, in the home, it has to come from the home, and the school, I think, can do it as well if enough information is put together and it's a goal we can achieve. You know, it's really nice to have a Band-Aid, but if we can get to the source and the cause of some of these things, we'd be quite a few steps ahead. I'm not saying it's the only cause, I'm not saying to get rid of them, but I think learning to discipline the youth so they can grow up healthier would be something we could really be involved with. And even, you know, we go out and we've got some young kids in this valley and we've got some older children as well. My wife will tell you about them. But, you know, when we go out, we do we don't use our cell phones. We don't. We want to be with them. We want to be present. And that's really, we feel important. And as a mentor, how can we mentor? Is be there, be available, and when the conversation quits, listen, because there's more to come. So I'm grateful for this opportunity tonight, and I'd like to see something along that line, I think. Let's get to the source of some of these things and see if we can root it out. Thank you.
One thing that I became aware of was there's a snack program here in the valley, and I think it is so important, and I don't know if a lot of people know about it, but there's so many kids in the schools that don't have the food they need, the health, nutrition they need, and this is something done by an organization, and you can find out about it through the public schools. And these kids, they not only need emotional help, they need nourishment. And this snack program is getting that nourishment to them. And not only do they get nourishment, they get a little note in their bag, like, you're awesome, have a terrific day, you're important. And they get this note every single week with their snacks, and a good healthy snack. And it's fun not only to go and put these snacks in the bags. Sometimes I get it mixed up because you can only have this snack and this snack and this snack. And so maybe I put too many in the bag sometimes, but it doesn't matter. It's just fun to help. And there are a lot of children who show up to put these snacks in these bags, and they feel important. And, you know, this is working together, like Brett was saying, to communicate and work with these kids. And so anyway, it's once a month, and people just volunteer, and they do it here in the building, in the food area.
In the food bank.
In the food bank.
Yep.
And it's fun, and people get together, and it's great for the kids.
So that brings up a very good point and kind of follows up on Jamie's statement. We do have evidence-based programs right here in the valley, and if you want to help, volunteer. Whether it's packing the snacks or doing an after-school program, find where your strengths are, because we have a lot of really great programs. Volunteer at Boys and Girls Club or Big Brothers Big Sisters, at the food bank, at the United Way. There are so many ways we can help, and I would like to kind of follow up on something that Mike has said with the cell phones and things in school. You're right, it doesn't start in the school, it starts in the home. But one thing I took away from what you said is, as parents and community members, if we want to see a change, and we want to see a change in our schools, in our communities, we need to support the work that's being done.
We need to support our community, each other, and our schools, and our law enforcement, so we can help do those things. Not by trying to change everything, but make it better. So I had a couple questions in the back, and then I'll work my way forward again. Just a minute.
Hi, I'm Claire, and I'm here with a team of mental health professionals, really just looking at being able to increase accessibility. We have a dream to put a mental health therapist, at least one, on every school campus so that we could reduce barriers to transportation, to time for the athletes that can go during school so they don't have to miss practice, all of those things, but we're running into a lot of barriers of accessibility, and so I'm just here to ask for feedback on how to make that vision possible, because I think if every student could have access to a mental health professional, we can make a lot of difference together in the community, working with schools, working with all of the nonprofits, and being able to bridge the gaps that are currently there.
I can speak for Kalispell Public Schools. We have a school-based, it's called a CSCT program, so we have a school-based therapist in every one of our schools. We used to have 2 teams in multiple school sites, and what has happened, and we've worked with Logan Health, we've worked with Intermountain, Greater Valley, to put therapists in our schools. This year, we started off the year 5 short. They couldn't find people to do the work anymore, and they're aging out and retiring, and it's really hard to bring someone in for $35,000, $40,000 into this valley with the cost of living and a lot of other factors that go into that. The biggest challenge I see with the CSCT programs is that they are primarily based on income. So the only people that can really access them are those who demonstrate an income level that would put them in a Medicaid status. And so that's been part of our challenge as a public school, is how do we do that? And then we looked at some of the changes that happened in the legislation and the messes that it made for public schools to be able to provide the match. It's just been a real challenge for us. But I mean, if there are therapists out in our community who don't have jobs, there are jobs available for people. We're looking all the time.
I just would like to clarify one thing, in that with CSCT and some of the programs, there are really strict criteria for students to be able to meet those. And my goal is to put a therapist, if there are no criteria, we could manage billing. It doesn't have to be paid by the school. It's really just creating a safe space on campuses from an outside organization that can provide the services that they'd be going to an outpatient, but just in a familiar space, so there are no barriers.
Claire, I think it might be good to connect a little bit with Logan Health, with Brittany Coburn, who is running the new school-based mental health clinics, and then also Greater Valley Health, because those would be the ones that are helping access those points. And I know you have a passion for it, and I think it's a good project. So I guess across the board, I encourage everybody to try to see how you can get involved with what's happening, because the more we just try to create new things, it can tend to silo us even more. So learning about what's happening in the community, and trying to get involved in those things, and then seeing if you can bolster those efforts, I think is a really good way to have positive impact.
I'm reading this, I apologize, I just didn't want to break it down in case something to focus on. Okay, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for putting on this event. We, and I say we, because this is a collective, all of us who love our children. We are losing too many beautiful young people, including a Big Fork student last night. Thank you, Dr. Poland, specifically for highlighting the role of firearms in many of these tragedies and the critical importance of gun safety protocols. You're in Montana here, and I know from personal experience, this is a very challenging conversation to have. So I thank you for putting that point out there, and I'm going to take that point and go with it here. According to Everytown for Gun Safety, Montana's rate is 2 times the national average. for deaths, firearms, and suicide deaths. So, my question is for Captain Corbett. Captain Corbett, hello, thank you for what you do. One proven strategy to reduce suicides by firearms is a gun buyback program. That is proven, that is evidence-based in communities across the country. So, in the spirit of what we've all been talking about it takes a village, I'm putting this out there to you as the representative of the Kalispell Police Department. Will Kalispell Police Department be a leader in this effort and partner with us? There is a local organization called Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. We have a Flathead chapter. Will you partner with us? Not one more. Thank you.
That specifically is a question that should probably be answered by the chief.
Okay.
The thing that's necessary for that to work is for people to want to get rid of their firearms. Anybody that wants to get rid of their firearm can sell it. And so they have the ability to get rid of them if they want to. And so I don't know that that's the police department's job to do that, but again, that's going to be a job that's going to have to be answered, or I'm sorry, a question that's going to have to be answered by the chief.
Will you forward that, or shall I just? Do you want to ask the chief, or shall I email the chief?
Micah can text him.
You'll use his cell phone.
After the meeting, I will use my technology right now.
Because I can tell you that in other communities, it has been a partnership with the police department, probably providing the safety, I'm guessing, maybe that's the factor of why the police departments get involved as the collector of the weapons. I just think we have nothing to lose other than more kids. And I know that you don't typically release to the public the methodology, so I don't know of this cluster. I can just speak personally. For me, I've been in education locally for 13 years, not in this district, but in neighboring districts, and I lost 4 students to suicide death by firearm. So I know. So please consider it. I mean, to me, it's nothing to lose other than more beautiful children. Thank you for listening.
Myself personally, and I know the police department and the city would very much support efforts to educate on safety and things like that. But as far as taking or buying people's property that they could sell elsewhere if they wanted to get rid of them, I don't know that we would do that.
Yeah, I'm a former grief counselor back east, and I just wanted to make a comment based on the concern for that 9-year-old that couldn't get an appointment for a long time. I just want to say that there was a quote in the newspaper about these events this week, and one of the things that was said is, and I don't remember who said it, but there was the mention that suicide survivors want to help. And whoever addressed that question said, well, we don't really need that. We've got everything, we've got this program that's based on expert evidence and all of that. And my question was, when I came here, well, if you've had this cluster, it means that something is, not that it's not working, but it's not enough. And it seems to me that your survivors are just exactly the people you need to help in the interim before a child can see someone with a huge caseload. And I just think that that's a very obvious pool of people that can help. And even if you had 2 adults or even 2 children for each school, that would be something. And it just seems to me that that's really important. And then the other question that I have is, and I don't know all the specifics of all the children who have committed suicide here, but I do know that it would be useful to actually do almost a psychological autopsy of the community, of the people who knew that person, and to analyze it very kindly and compassionately to find out what maybe they missed and how they could address that if they saw the signs. Those things seem kind of obvious to me, and I just wanted to mention it. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing some of that in. I can speak a little bit about the survivor piece, and I would agree. It's a huge part of healing. It's a huge part of continuing to walk forward, is connecting with others who've had a similar experience, especially if it's a loss by suicide. And so we do facilitate a lot of those conversations through Tamarack, Grief Resource, and AFSP does a really nice job of making a lot of that happen too. There's a program called Healing Conversations where folks can reach out and talk to just a peer, another person in the community who's had a similar loss by suicide. They try to get it as close as we can, knowing none of us have the exact same journey, but if a parent, say, has lost a child to suicide, they're able to connect with another survivor who's a little bit further along on the journey. So we do have some of those things happening, and it's so important for the community to know that those options are available. And then if you are walking the journey, if you have lost someone by suicide and are feeling ready to take the steps where you'd like to connect with others and share your story, both of our organizations can make that happen. We have some trainings, again, with the evidence-based stuff. We do just want to make sure that we're keeping everybody really safe. And so that's what we look at is how can we facilitate these safe conversations and get folks a little bit of training so that, sometimes it can, yeah, absolutely. It can just be unfair to ask someone who's just lost someone recently to dive into that. So we just want to make sure we're... Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for bringing attention to that. And then the psychological autopsy, does anyone want to speak on that? I know that we... Do you want me to?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think that a lot of people are, as we search for answers and we understand suicide is just far more complex than a breakup or a lost job or a fight with a friend or family member. Those are what we call precipitating events in this field. Kind of proverbially the straw that breaks the camel's back, if you will. But regarding a psychological autopsy, we are very much working on how are these deaths connected and where are those circles of vulnerability that we can identify to go and put pointed interventions into to try to help prevent more. It does take a little time just because of coroner's reports and with minors it's a little more challenging because of privacy, but we are very much working on that.
Can I ask something? Scott has brought this up several times in his talks, and it's a hard one, in that the answers died with those students. And from a school perspective, when you're trying to communicate with a community that is, I have parents that are so scared and looking for what is it, what can we do, how can we help, and it's really challenging. When we talk about this autopsy, one of our students had been in our school district for 10 days. We didn't even know this young person. And so looking for those answers for someone that we just hardly had any interaction with. And we don't get to tell the stories of the other interventions that were in place and whether they had sought treatment or were on medication or what their precipitating events were or what their adverse childhood experiences were. And so that's something that's really hard to comprehend and grasp as an individual, as a parent, as a community, especially when we're scared. And we wish we could all sit up here and tell you we have the answers and this is the one thing that connected all of those kids. And there isn't, that we've been able to identify right now. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to know and continue to work and be better in being able to identify those things. But there's just a component of it that's just super complex. I think for anybody sitting up here and dealing with this, and certainly for anybody who's sitting out there tonight, it's just really, really hard.
One of the goals of having the walk every year is to provide a chance for people to meet other people. They see a lot of others who are on either the journey or are there because they care, and there's a lot of networking that goes on during that walk. And there's also a lot of resources available at that walk. One of the resources, and I didn't chime in earlier, but there's a whole program about gun safety. And it's been developed by American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It is available. And one of the things that we are very blessed up here, because Nate Shute goes into the schools and we don't have to duplicate efforts, we can work in conjunction with these efforts. And we are very willing to do whatever we can. And I know that when you talk about funding these things, that's one of the reasons why we do the walk, because we want to make sure we have trainers that are made available, whether it's healing conversations, gun safety, if it's just knowing QPR and all those kinds of things. We just want to make sure that we make those things available, and that's part of the services that we can offer. People just have to ask, whether it's a business, an organization, ask, a church, ask, and we'll figure out a way to get those trainings and make those things available to people.
I have a question. What is the process, and is it allowable to have any faith-based organizations coming into the schools and on campus? Because so many of these kids are losing hope, and yet there's hope in faith. So when I was growing up, I was very involved in Young Life. My Young Life leaders would come on campus, bring pizzas, hand out flyers for club. All the kids would be like, oh my gosh, pizza. And they'd be coming around, and they were able to get a bunch of kids to come to club and learn about God and hope, that there's something bigger than them and bigger than what they're going through right now. Do they have any chance of coming on campus and partnering with local churches, having youth leaders coming into schools? Is there a process? Is that even allowed? Is that something that, a conversation that can move forward?
Anybody besides me?
I think
want to
that's
take that question? That's a great question. And I'm just going to, it's complicated, but the first thing we have to understand from a school perspective, regardless of my beliefs or anyone else in the school, is a separation of church and state. And we have to be respectful of that. That is guaranteed by law, that we cannot mix the two. That does not mean that we can't grant access and that we don't have clubs like Fellowship of Christian Athletes or Young Life or ministers or youth pastors that come in and have lunch with kids and do things, but those cannot be in a captive audience type of perspective. And so we just have to be very careful with what the messaging is, and we certainly support that. I certainly support that as a superintendent. I supported it as a building administrator. And Scott talked, he talks about protective factors, and one of the key protective factors are places of worship and connections to faith and a community of faith and the resources and the things that come with that. And so we aren't going to ever discourage it. We just have to be careful that we follow the law when it comes to how it's put in place in schools.
So you do allow youth leaders and Young Life leaders and stuff on campus, like to maybe have lunch with kids and stuff? That's not breaking any rules?
That is not breaking any rules. Yeah. Yep, and I'll just tell you, I meet with church leaders all the time, pastors of our local churches, and they are looking for ways to come in and be a part of kids' lives. Regardless of your faith, there are universal truths about humanity. Things like compassion and grace and forgiveness. Doesn't matter. Those things exist no matter who you are, and we're going to support that.
Can I make a comment on that real quick? Sorry. This lady over here talked a little bit about it, and phones, and there's some other stuff. When I was going through motorcycle training, it was probably one of the most difficult trainings I've been through with the police department. You set up these cones, and you had to get around here and not fall over. Well, we fall over a lot. And one of the things that you had to do was, if you wanted to go from point A to point B, you needed to focus on where you wanted to go and not on the cone. If you looked at the cone, you're going to hit the cone, guaranteed. And then I was going to fall over, and guaranteed. And it happened a lot. Once we realized that I got to focus on where I want to go and not on what I don't want to hit, it helped. And I think that helped. And then I'm going to speak here now personally, not as a representative of the police department or the city. And one of the challenges with the school, like Michael pointed out, and the lady brought up St. Matt's and Stillwater Christian School. They have the ability to teach the kids a certain worldview that focuses on something more than just math and arithmetic, but why are we here? And that's something that gets pretty tricky sometimes in the public schools. And I think when the kids have a purpose and a hope, that they become much more resilient and can face incredible hardship. Anybody can. If you have faith and hope in a future and something bigger than yourself, and you can survive incredible hardship. And then when you're missing that, just about anything can tip you over. So I think in addition to, like the cones here, it's important to focus on the signs and things to be looking for people who are in crisis, for people who are in trouble, for people that need connection. But I think it's also important not to forget to focus on, again, something more significant. Why are we here? Why are we moving forward? And it's like I can focus on not getting sick, or I can focus on staying healthy. Staying healthy is probably a better perspective sometimes.
Roxana, can I add to that quickly? And I just feel really compelled to share something that does not necessarily reflect my personal views, but we got some pushback for holding Scott's presentation on Monday night at Canvas Church. I think Canvas Church did a phenomenal job of opening that as a community space, but I do think it's important to recognize that the best thing we can do for suicide prevention is provide a sense of belonging and a sense of connection. And I need to recognize that that doesn't happen for everybody in a church, and that you can find a purpose and meaning in your life outside of the church. And one of the highest risk groups of people, and youth especially, are those who identify in the LGBTQ plus community. And so we need to be sensitive to how are we providing them a sense of belonging and purpose where they may not find that in a church or in an organized religion.
So, hello, madam. One of the things I noticed as I look back at all the great people here is there's multiple generations represented, and what I needed in school was different than what anybody else needed, than what Micah needed, than what Allison needed, than what Leanna needed. So my question is specifically at you, Micah, not like you've had to answer tonight. Anyway, but when you first started on the board introduction, the panel introduction, one of the questions you asked your students is, what do you need? What do they need? Because I don't have kids in the school system, but what can I do as a community member to meet them where they are and give them what they need rather than me speculate what they need?
Yeah. So we were very purposeful when we brought Scott in to identify key groups that we wanted to meet with. We wanted to meet with teachers, we wanted to meet with counselors, we wanted to meet with administrators, we wanted to meet with our entire community. And one of the things that we recognize sometimes in schools or in our systems is that you get a lot of adults talking, right? How many kids are here tonight? Where is their voice? That was the question. And Scott actually facilitated the conversation, and he asked 5 questions, and the responses were phenomenal. The first thing he said is think of who is a trusted adult and what characteristics do they have that make you trust them. He asked, what do you need from adults? And the things that they told us were, we need you to acknowledge right now that we are hurting. We need you to listen more and talk less. We need you to understand the pressure and stress of school and being an AP student and an IB student, and I've got 14 activities, and I've got all these things going on in my life. What they really want is for parents to listen more and talk less, create space for them to have conversations, and let them be heard. That was really what it boiled down to. And I think as a community and the generations that are here, I think everybody in this room and in our community has a place where you can somehow connect with kids. Whether it's through an organized program like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, whether you want to volunteer and come play cribbage with 4th graders. Who would want to beat up on 4th graders in cribbage? I see it, Pat. You probably let them win. I mean, there are so many opportunities to become involved, and it's just giving them that space. They want to talk, but if we talk at them and we tell them and we try and fix everything, you know, the great example is if Allison's crying and I try and wipe away her tears, I'm telling her it's not okay to cry. I'm going to fix this instead of just letting her have her cry. Scott and Casey were also part of that group. Were there other things that you heard?
I just wanted to share something as a parent that I actually think I might have learned from you, Scott, when you were here a few years ago. But that resonates with me a lot, that don't fix, just listen. And my kids are little, but when my kids tell me about something distressing and I really want to fix, because I'm a control person and I have all this knowledge and experience and these solutions, but my answer to them is, do you need something from me, or did you just want me to know that? And almost 100% of the time, it's, Mom, I just wanted you to know. They just want to be heard. Even 5 and 8-year-olds just want to be heard.
Micah, we also asked them what they needed from school staff.
Yeah, we did ask them that. And again, they kind of reiterated the same things. We need space in our classrooms to be able to talk and share what's going on in our lives. And I understand and get that is not for everybody. And not everybody has to participate. You can pass. And, you know, tonight, this afternoon, Scott presented to all of our 6th through 12th grade staff. And after his presentation, I talked to our teachers, and this is what I told them. I said, you have permission from me to set aside your curriculum and check in on your students to see how they're doing anytime you want. The lessons and the quizzes and the tests and all of that stuff that's going on, that's not important right now. It certainly has a place, and we want our kids to be well educated, and they will get it. I don't think anybody in here who still remembers that the mitochondria is the power plant of the cell is going to be lost without that information. There are just things that are far more important, and I think recognizing that. And, you know, there was a question or a comment that came up earlier about mental health and mental illness. And that's one thing that, you know, how do we destigmatize that? And what, you know, when I say the word mental illness, what do you think of? Bipolar, schizophrenic, you know, these high-class terminology, but mental illness is as simple as being depressed. And you can be sad for a couple of weeks, and those things can wax and wane, but being able to recognize that and being able to say, man, I see you're hurting. I see something is going on. You want to talk about it? It's those little conversations and those little things that you can do for kids. And I don't think it's just kids. I think it's adults. I know too many adults who have committed suicide. And when you look at Flathead County and the statistics around suicide, I'm a guy who's right in the middle of that statistic for being at most at risk. And we've seen it over and over. And so, you know, we talk about this is not a school problem, this is a community problem. And it, to me, the kids, I mean, that gets me. But the adults and the other people in our community that are impacted by suicide of other adults is equally as devastating.
And just to touch on not so much the question, but the answer from the students and how it kind of comes back to the parents, right? And getting them to listen more and talk less. And that is really what this parent coaching program is all about. It sits down and gives parents perspective of maybe what they're doing, they can be doing something different. And a lot of the time, and what I built this off of was we just don't know what we don't know. And so you don't know that maybe you could be doing it different. And so many times too, as Casey had said, you know, when we're responding to our kids or reacting sometimes, it's a lot of the time out of fear. You know, fear from maybe our own trauma from our childhood, or fear from just their pain and their hurt, and we don't want to see them suffering. And so coaching and working with parents one-on-one really gives us the opportunity to sit with parents and provide some perspective to them that they can be doing things a little bit differently. And that, again, we don't know what we don't know, so even as a community, as a family, we could be maybe doing things a little differently, and obviously that's what the kids are asking.
We haven't talked too much about the data in Montana in statistics, and so Casey and Scott, maybe you can help me on this a little bit, but I know I'm a school counselor at Kalispell Middle School, and I work in suicide prevention for the district, and I know that Montana has been in the top 3 for the past 4 years across the nation in suicide. So we have a lot of suicide loss survivors in our community statewide. And when you are a suicide loss survivor, this is where I need your help. I believe the statistic might be you are 8 times more likely to consider suicide.
I don't know, Susan, I apologize.
Might be 6.
Okay. So you're 6 times more likely to consider suicide. And all of us in this room right now are being impacted by suicide, and so I look at you and think of you as being a suicide loss survivor. I have 3 close people in my life that have died by suicide. And it really does take the work of all of us. It's not just the schools. I've seen kids go to Pathways. I've seen families really ache about trying to get services for their kids. If you're looking for counselors for your kids, please contact the school counselor. We do have lists of providers. I can't guarantee you that they're going to have openings, but I can tell you that we are going to do whatever we can to try to prevent death and suicide.
We have had some great conversations here tonight, some tough questions, and I don't think it should end tonight. This is just the beginning of how we work together to make things better. I have a cell phone, and it's about to quit on me. But I had a message I want to share with you very quickly, and then we're going to talk about a couple of ideas that have been started as potential ways that we can start reaching out to each other, and maybe some solutions, some ways we can start reconnecting with one another. This message, and I'm going to do some paraphrasing here, but it says, I understand there's a lot of need that needs to be done in the Valley to help kids. I know, I'm 16 years old and I go to high school here. One of my friends committed suicide. And I think about it every day sitting around the lunch table when we're laughing about silly things. I wish she would have reached out to me. I wish I would have listened, and I would have known what to do. So my question to all of you is, why should we trust you? And how can you show us that it's okay for us to trust you and not to be scared? This is from a 16-year-old. So as a community member, a parent, and thank you, Jamie, for pointing out, a grandparent, we have to do better. We have to listen. And I wrote down some of the things as everyone is, as we're going through our questions and the panel tonight. And it keeps coming back to listen. Listen to the people in our community who are hurting. We need hope. Our young people need hope. Our community members need hope. In particular for me, the last 18 months during the pandemic has been very difficult. We lost a lot of connections with each other. We need relationships. We need a safe place. We need people like everyone here tonight to show up, to care, to connect. As community leaders, nonprofit leaders, we need to work together. We need to not work in silos. We need to work together. And I think as a newer community member, we are making great strides toward doing that, but there's more to be done. As community members, and I'm going to ask you to be willing to step up and help out. As parents, help. Find the thing that you are passionate about, the organization, the school, the police department, whatever that is, there is a way to connect. So some of the things that have been suggested in other conversations before we started the conversation here tonight, or before we opened the town hall, were our young people need a safe place to go. We have started coming in at 7 o'clock in the mornings, and I am not a morning person, so I just want you all to understand this is a sacrifice. But we are here at 7 a.m., and we have 3 young people who come and meet us here in the mornings, and we walk. The first couple of days, it was pretty quiet. They didn't talk, and we didn't want to talk. We, being the old people in the group, did not want to talk. We want them to have the chance to talk. After the first day or 2, it is yak, 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 all the way up and down the hallways. 4 laps make a mile. Everyone is invited to join in. Not just young people, everyone. It gives us a place to reconnect. No cell phones, you can have it, but we're not on them. We're talking to each other and connecting with each other. Another idea that we've had is to have a community, have a game night. Like once a week, once a month, come in, play games. I don't know that it'll be cribbage because I don't want to get beat up in that, but.
It's okay if you lose.
I guarantee I will. Guaranteed, because I don't know what it is, so I'm gonna lose. But, play games, do puzzles. Just offer people a place to go so we can be together. Young, old, everything in between. The turnout at the suicide prevention walk showed us there is a huge need, and our whole valley, we're hurting. So if there are little things and big things that we can do, and you want to be a part of that solution, please reach out. I'm at the United Way every day, Monday through Friday. If we don't have the program or the activity that you want to get involved with, we will connect you to someone who does, like Food Bank and packing snacks for the kids, or working with Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, anything like that. It really does take a village, and we are the village. We can come up with solutions, different ways, and it's going to be different for everyone because we're all different. But if we can find ways to listen and recognize the signs and when people are hurting, we have to be able to help. But I think this is just the first of many conversations that we need to have.
So Flathead has a few Flathead Facebook groups and social media groups. And so in the wake of this town hall, we started a group called Flathead SOS, Support Our Students. If you haven't joined, please join. We're talking about things that we can do in the community. We're asking questions. A parent might go on there and say, you know, my child's having a hard time getting into any social groups. There's just not enough space or whatever it might be. And we're working together to find some solutions or ideas and passing them on to parents, or if they just not really sure what they can do or extra support for their kids, or you're a counselor in a school and you want to go on there and just inform some of the questions that are coming in on what the schools are doing or what services are out there possibly in your school. So it's just this forum to open up the conversation to not just the schools or not just to parents, talking amongst parents, but you know, getting other health providers and other people involved as well, and then just sharing our resources.
Allison, I would like to talk to you about maybe setting up some training here and offering it to the community, anyone who would be interested in participating in that. So we will talk and we will let you know when we can make that happen.
I'll just share a couple final thoughts. Since I answered a lot of questions tonight, and always feel free to email me. I always try to respond to everybody. The first thing that I would say is that, you know, our schools, our high schools in particular, are grieving. It has been a tough 4 months, and we have amazing schools, and we have amazing teachers and staff, people like Michael and Susan Sherman who are counselors in our district. And I saw Michelle Payne was here earlier, principal of Flathead High School. And these are people who deeply care about our kids. They wouldn't be doing this if they didn't. I would ask that you would support them in the weeks to come. Scott talked today that postvention and student reaction to suicide can last for up to 2 years. Every time there's an anniversary of the death, or a kid's birthday, or a missed graduation, or a prom, or whatever it is going to take time to heal from this. I would also say that we don't have a lot of data to throw at you, but in my 20 years as an administrator, we have saved far more lives than we have ever lost. And it's not because of anything I did. It's people like Officer Corbett and Allison and the people sitting up here. When kids are hurting, when we know that there's something going on, we do everything we can to wrap ourselves around them and support them. And I am just grateful for our community and the people that are here tonight. And we're not always perfect, I know that. I get those emails too. But they really do, it's for all of positive intent, and always assume that. And if you know of a student or someone who is struggling and you don't know if we know, call an administrator, call a counselor, call me. We will always work to support our students. And thank you for being here tonight.
I hate following you. I just want to say that Mike had just named something for me that is the hardest part of this work, is that we don't get to know how many lives we've saved. So do please be gentle with those of us trying to do the work. And I also had a realization tonight that over the last several days as we've been in the schools, and I've kind of questioned my ability to compartmentalize, and why am I not feeling this so hard, and why am I not crying more, and why am I not more sad? And I think I just realized it's because I do still have hope. And I hope that all of you leave here with some hope tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming tonight. Please get involved, reach out, let's get connected, and keep the conversations going. Thank you.